In this video, we'll be concerned with the application of learning theories. We'll look at various learning theories and look at some of the backgrounds to some of the thinking in this area. Teachers and trainers use a variety of techniques that help them deliver effective learning. It's widely understood now in the training community, in the teaching and learning communities, that individuals learn differently, and a variety of techniques, generally speaking, are welcomed in this area, welcomed by the learner. And to that end, there is a growing literature on how people learn and what is good practice. Learning theories play a vital role as they help us understand the use of experience and reflection in developing new ideas, in being creative and learning new skills. So it's not just a question of learning something by rote, just learning something, but it's a question of reflecting on the learning and getting a deeper understanding of what was intended. Sometimes when we learn something or encounter something new, we can sit back later, perhaps later in the day or later in the week, sit back and think about what happened, and we'll get new insights and greater understanding of what happened or what the idea was. So there's now a greater understanding of the requirements for deeper learning, and the deeper learning involves thinking back, rationalizing it to ourselves, perhaps talking to colleagues, getting different perspectives and trying to piece together a greater understanding of what was intended. Learning theories help us understand how learning occurs. So learning theories are useful. They're perspectives on learning, and they help us to understand how learning occurs. They also we can understand interactions and culture. Sometimes there are blockages to learning caused by different perspectives or what people bring into the learning situation, bring in from the home, from the community, from their own school and so on. And these may be blockages, or they may even be propellants, in the sense that they're going to make the ideas even more vibrant and more challenging and more interesting, and learning is going to be improved as a consequence. It can work in all sorts of directions. It's not a one-way street. But social interactions and culture are also important. For example, learners. How do learners relate to each other within a class? Perhaps it's a group situation where students are discussing an issue amongst themselves. How do they interact with each other? What are the tensions, and what are the good parts of the interaction, and what parts could be improved? Are there issues about culture and about participation? Perhaps some people are reticent to speak, others may want to talk a lot. So there are issues. The role of experience is also important, particularly in areas like business and management. People can experience something and much later, perhaps even much later in their lives, go back and talk about their experiences from the past and what they did and how they solved the problem. Clearly, this type of learning is applicable in business and management. It wouldn't perhaps be right to say that we could use this type of learning in, say, mathematics, because we have the experience of solving problems in mathematics, and that's about as far as we go. We don't actually experience the problem itself. We experience our approach to the problem. But in business and management, there may be practical problems or issues associated with reorganization or with growth or the marketing plan or with recruitment or some aspect of the business. And sometimes managers can go back to previous experiences and learn from the previous experiences, bring in examples and issues encountered previously. how we construct ideas and opinions of the world in which we live. That's important. It's important how we rationalize the world, how we understand the world. Sometimes we may have views or opinions which are very idiosyncratic, very unique to us, and perhaps not accurate. So sometimes what we need to do is to lay open our ideas and lay them open fairly for scrutiny by others and for criticism. In the academic world, academics are noted for looking for criticism. It's a culture in which the participants in academia look for criticism. They want criticism because it's through criticism they learn. It's through criticism the work is improved. So how we understand the world, or how we work, or how we relate to others, sometimes we need to set this out openly for criticism. Ask for constructive ideas. Ask for new ways of working, new ways of thinking. And all of this will be incorporated into various types of learning theories that we can come across in the literature. One writer in the area, Cobb, he said that learning is the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. The experience, let's say we're doing mathematics, we have the experience of solving the problem. We have an internal experience, and that may help us the next time we encounter a similar problem. We can think back to various rules that we've learned. But it could be a practical problem, let's say in business, how to distribute a product to outlets. We look back to our experiences and we gain knowledge from what we did, from what we encountered. We think about it, we reflect upon it. It happened in the past, this is how we solved the problem. Now we reflect on it and we incorporate that into any new situation which is similar. According to Stewart and Rigg, learning is better thought of as a change within the person. It appears as a new or improved way of thinking or feeling about something, or of perceiving it or doing it. So it's a change within the person. Learning does change us. It's like waking up. We are suddenly more aware of particular situations. We're more aware of problems and solutions, and we're looking for logical ways to solve problems and better ways of dealing with each other and resolving conflict. And we can do this, as I said earlier, perhaps by looking at our experiences and learning from our experiences. We can do it by having ideas and leaving our ideas open to scrutiny and to comment and criticism by others. And instead of being angry with the others for making criticisms, we should be grateful, because the criticisms may contain some insights that we have missed, and the criticisms will expose those insights and enable us to modify our thinking and improve our thinking. Learning is a part of our being. It is the process that enables us to mature and grow. If we don't learn, we would still be behaving like children. We would not be. We could not look after ourselves in the world. We would vanish as a species. In fact, if humans didn't learn, we wouldn't be even living in caves. We have learned from our experiences. We have thought, we have passed around ideas, we have rationalized what we're doing, we reflect on what we're doing, and later on we learn to write it down and come up with new ideas, and then we have science and methodology, and And that's how we evolved. That's how we got here as a species. If we didn't learn, if we were not a learning species, we would simply have become extinct, probably, like other creatures that lived on the earth. Only through acquiring and interpreting knowledge do we become aware of our surroundings and our experiences. If we don't have the equipment to understand the situations in which we live, the social situations, the physical situations, the environment in which we live in, or the processes that are going on around us, if we don't understand that, then we're missing everything. We're missing participating in that society. We're missing understanding of what is happening within society. And therefore we won't understand what's happening to us. So it's only through wakening up our cognitive senses, wakening up us, that we start to understand the predicaments and the opportunities and what is happening right around us. Barnett introduced the concept of the super complex society. There is no doubt that as we came out from caves and marched out of Africa and up into Europe, and some went over to Asia and some came to Western Europe and so on, as these great migrations happened, we set off individually in different societies, all making big contributions, all leading to change. Sometimes we were separated by distance and we didn't know what each other was doing. Only now can we look back on the records and say, well, in fact, it seems to be a part of mankind's development that we do experiment and we do try out things and we do think about things. And it's all happening even though the people were not in contact. So people in China were doing great work in science and looking at science and the development of ideas, and in the West there was similar work going on. Barnett sees a super complex society because as time goes by, we've solved many issues. There are many more issues to solve, but the issues that remain are increasingly complex. So we're building ever increasingly complex solutions. The world in which we live is rapidly changing. We live in a society of super complexity. We know from our own experiences that the internet, which originally was a good way of passing files from one distant place to another, it was a fast way of communications. But now the internet is much more than that. It's a full-fledged communication system. It's an entertainment system. It's a work system. It contains vast amounts of human knowledge, of art, of science, mathematics. It's a didactic tool. It helps us study. So we're starting to live in an increasingly sophisticated society, more complex society. And these complexities are driving forces that enforce the need to learn and adapt to the changing society. It's imperative now that students learn. It's imperative that people learn. It's imperative that to keep up with what's happening in society, people must engage in the processes of the society. We must know what's happening on the internet. We must know what's happening in communications, in business. We have the advent of globalization, trade across the world. We have all sorts of technologies that are impinging upon our lives. The very equipment we use in the home has changed. We have microwave ovens that cook food without a fire. So we have not only satellite television, telephones that can phone the other end of the world, we can teleconference with people in different continents. So it's important that the people are trained and that they learn to engage with these technologies and understand the technologies. Societies that can't or reject the technologies, perhaps subsections of societies or particular individuals who don't want to be involved, don't want the trouble of being involved, progressively they are going to get out of step. Progressively they're going to be left behind. And progressively they will be the ones bringing up the rear. So it's important that people engage in learning, if not for nothing else, just to be able to participate in the society in which we live. And the society in which we live is increasingly global. Learning encapsulates many terms. Acquiring new knowledge and information. Well, that's what learning is. It's acquiring new knowledge. It's acquiring information. It's acquiring facts and ideas, and it's developing skills as well. So we learn new skills. We learn how to do things differently. We learn how to use computers. We learn how to use particular machines. And all the time in work, we're asked to learn even more new skills. So when doctors qualify, they're able to perform certain operations and certain functions in medicine. But as new developments and new discoveries happen in medicine, doctors are expected to keep up to date, to update their skills, update their learning. And this happens right throughout. Teachers are the same, and it happens right across society. Many jobs are like that. Learning helps us to perceive understanding. We have a greater understanding when we reflect on things. When we encounter a new situation and we learn the new situation, we go away, we think about it, we reflect on it. We have a greater understanding of it as a consequence. And of course, this will change our personal attitudes. As we grow with new ideas, new challenges, new technologies, we all the time have to change our attitudes. We're now more familiar with people in different parts of the world because of better technology. The news on television in the evening can bring pictures from right around the world. We're aware of natural disasters in other parts of the world that perhaps in the past we wouldn't have known about, or we wouldn't have known about for many weeks or months until newspapers published it. Now we see it almost immediately. We see the achievements of other peoples right around the world. We see them immediately. We can see sporting events on the other side of the world. We can see them in real time as they happen. And this changes our attitudes. It changes us as people. We're no longer local. We're no longer in that small society in which perhaps our families lived in the past. We're in a much bigger society. Theory is an idea, a way of thinking which is composed of in a model to articulate how processes work. So we've got many terms in this sentence. First of all, a theory is like an idea. It's a conjecture. It's a way of thinking. So when Newton was hit by an apple sitting under a tree, he started to think something caused it to fall downwards. Why didn't it fall sidewards? Why didn't it fall up? Why don't apples fall up into the sky? Why did they fall down to the ground? So a theory, it's an idea. It's a way of thinking. And once we have a structure to our thinking, and a lot of the way we think is based on the old Greek ideas about logic and Aristotle and what is logical thinking. But we set out a way of thinking. And we come to a conclusion, having tested our thoughts and having reflected on what we think. And what we've got then is an outcome, and the outcome may not suit us. We may not like the outcome. It may suggest that we were doing things wrongly or we were being silly in the past, and we don't like that. But we have to come to terms with the fact that is it. That's what happened. So it's as if learning teaches us how to change. We have to change ourselves. We have to change how we think and how we relate to others. And we have to go looking for these learning opportunities, which, as I said, could actually hurt us in the sense that it tells us that we've been doing things wrongly all those years, perhaps, or we didn't understand certain things all those years. Sometimes we make a model because the real world is very complex. It's got many influences. And sometimes we want to just analyze something in relation to something else. Now we know there are lots of factors that impinge on this. But sometimes we just start by saying, yes, we'll look at A in the context of B. We know there are lots of other things that are going to be involved here, but we're just going to ignore them. We'll hold them constant. Economists are very good at doing this. They build models and they hold certain influences constant so that they can just analyze particular situations, analyze one variable against another. Learning theories are tried and tested through research and practical experience. And these will help to explain how individuals are motivated and the process of effective learning. So learning theories are part of the whole idea of setting up theories and testing ideas. So learning theories are also tested. They're subject to empirical investigation. Researchers analyze the learning theories to see if they're realistic, if they bring about solutions that are acceptable in the sense that they accord or the link to what we know happens. So researchers look at the learning theories and, if you like, test the theories if they can. And they bring into the arena practical experience, observations, surveys, data collection, and so on. And that they can test the theories out of this. And once they've tested the theories, if the theories are robust, if this still makes sense, they'll always be tested. They're still just theories. But there's more reliance placed upon them. And these will start to explain how we're motivated and how we learn effectively. How we're motivated to learn and how we learn effectively. There's a growing need to apply different strategies in order to aid in effective learning. Learning theories are a means to help trainers and teachers deliver effective learning in order to achieve best teaching practice. So the learning theories are, in a sense, there to help trainers and teachers to find out what is the best approach to learning. So clearly taking a set of students and threatening them with violence if they don't understand something is not acceptable. Taking a group of students and talking to them about the issues and getting them to understand the concepts and seeing the importance of certain theories, that may be more acceptable. Or even turning it into fun, make it the whole experience enjoyable. Why not? So, learning theories are ways which teachers and trainers can resort to. They can resort to the theories to try to select the best one for particular situations. In the modern complex world, we're talking here about advances in technology, media, email, internet, mobile phones, fax, although fax is a thing of the past really. But we're talking about advances in technology. So the modern super complex world engages in the uses of this type of technology. And it's important that people understand this and engage in education to try and understand it. So we also have globalization. And we have trying to understand standardization of legislation and equality and diversity, and the ethics and human rights issues. We can only understand this if we have a framework within which we learn it and we study it and we encounter it. So we need that framework to understand globalization. We can't understand the economic structure unless we properly study economics. The economic structure is extremely complex, and economists themselves try to reduce the complexity by just looking at certain variables in relationship to each other, as I said earlier. But economists know how complex the system is. And we live in a world in which there is the economy and economic relationships. And we need to understand these because this is what we do. We go to work, get a salary to pay the bills. We need to understand why prices change and why markets move and why there's shortages of certain items and surpluses of others. And we need to know because that makes us richer by knowing. We need to understand patterns of work and lifestyle. Work is changing. The work that the Victorians encountered was hard work. It was relying on the human body to do a lot of the manual pushing and pulling that was required in industry. Today, the chances are it's mechanized. The lifestyles that people had in the past were different to the present. That's all they had. That's all they knew. Today, we know more about medicine. We know more about society. We have better communications mechanisms in place. So the pattern of work and lifestyle is a lot different today. There's also pressure on public spending that we need to know and need to try and determine. Governments spend on education, but what is the reward? What's the return? What's the return on the investment that the government's making? Are people better? Are they more productive? Is it a better society? Do we need more police or less police? If we need more police, presumably society is getting worse. So look at the pressures that the government come under when talking about public spending and link it perhaps to education and look at the increasing sophistication of the world, look at the needs of education to try and keep up with that, and also look at government spending and what the government can do to try and promote a learning culture. Don't forget, the government's using taxpayers' money to do this. So the government must show that it's spending the money wisely. So there's an increasing pressure to learn, especially within the workplace. But it's an increasing pressure to learn in society as well. We need to know how to use bank cards and credit cards. We need to understand how to place orders for commodities online. We need to be able to use communications technology. We need to be able to keep up with what's happening in the world. But we also need to keep up with what's happening in the workplace, because the workplace, perhaps in many respects, may lead what's happening in society. Management must have the most up-to-date technology because that's cost-saving. Management recognise that they're in competitive situations. They operate in global markets. So they must have best practice at work. So skill updating and skill learning is very important in work. And for that reason, learning is very important. So why we learn? According to Bennett, we can only engage with this super complex society if we're willing to embrace it. We do this through learning to contribute to the changes to what society presents. So we learn, we look at society, and we have to accept this is the way society is moving. We as individuals can't do anything about it. We can't stop the march. It's progress. It's been a part of the human condition since we arrived on the planet. So we learn, and by learning, it enables us to more readily accept what's happening, understand what's happening, contribute to what's happening, and survive changes, perhaps lead some changes. We're always learning. We do things, we learn from doing. We're learning by doing. And in order to engage in this increasingly sophisticated society, we participate. And by participation, we learn every day. We keep our skills up to date through participation. According to Stuart Mann, we learn because we want to be successful. There's a need for achievement. If we don't learn, we stagnate. We stay the same. People around us will be marching onwards. They have learned, so they are moving on. We will stay the same if we don't learn. So it's important for us to keep up. And we do that. We need a sense of achievement. We need to update our skills. We need to learn. We need to participate. There's also a fear of failure. We learn because we're afraid of failure. We're afraid just in case we fall behind. We know there are a lot of influences around us which are complicated. Well, instead of running away from them, sometimes we encounter them. We face up to them and we seek learning programs that will help us address our learning needs so that we're able to cope with what's happening around us. So we don't have the fear of failure. We also want to be seen as someone who is participating in society and functioning in society. So we want approval. We want our colleagues and our families to know that we're capable of participating in the society. We're not being left behind. We want also to explore new ideas. There's no reason why all the change should be coming from the outside. We could be generating the change ourselves. We could be working on programs or ideas that's going to change some part of society as well. It could be a small-scale change even with the way we live, or it could be one within the local community, or it could be even one within the country, or internationally. It depends on how big the idea is or how effective the idea is. So the learning theories provide an understanding of how we learn and the concepts, strategies we adopt to help us to learn effectively. So the learning theories are important. There's a group of them that we may identify which will help us to understand the world in which we live. Generally speaking, they include such topics as behaviorism. Behaviorism is a particular set of ideas that we can encounter, and we'll encounter these in separate videos, so I won't discuss them here. But that's one approach. We have a more cognitive learning approach, which is also discussed in other videos. Social learning theory and experiential learning. And each of these will be the subject matter for other videos. But the point is there are different approaches to learning, and the issue is the effectiveness of the particular theories. Some will perhaps be more effective in some situations than others. What is it they have in common? Well, they have to be met with enthusiasm by the learner. The learner should want to learn. The learner should be capable of understanding and seeking solutions to areas that they don't completely understand. The learner should be able to reflect upon the learning and get deeper understanding and discuss the issues openly and learn from any feedback. So the point that comes out of what we've been discussing so far is that learning is not for one stage of our lives. It doesn't stop when we finish university. Learning is lifelong. And I think that's what comes out of this most effectively. That's all we're going to deal with in terms of learning theories and this approach to learning. It's a very wide-ranging discussion, I appreciate, and it deals with some very important issues about how we see change and how we see the need to learn and how we go about it. But it's one that's very difficult to get a very clear, definitive picture. There are simply the needs to participate in learning that come across as probably more universally acceptable. But as to how we learn, that may be debatable, and it may rely on one of these four in front of us at the moment. But that's all we're going to deal with in this session, so we're going to leave it at that. There are some references that may be useful. Some of them are fairly classic. And that's all we're going to deal with. So thank you for watching.